Hello, this is the video lecture for physics on Tuesday, September 15th. Today, I want to talk a little bit more about how we're going to solve equations. So this is really just going over a review of some algebra and how you manipulate equations. Today, we're just going to do a little bit of it. I want you to be comfortable with this because this is the kind of manipulation we're going to be doing a lot throughout the year. Hopefully you'll see that it's really a review of what you've already done. It's really not that hard. And this will get you probably easily more than halfway of how we're going to manipulate equations as we go through the rest of the year. So bear with me a little bit. I know it's a little bit boring going through the math, but if you have a good foundation and can do this, the rest of the year will be a lot easier. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is how do we solve an equation? So here I've got a simple equation. And we want to solve this simple equation for any variable that appears in this equation. So let's look at this real simple one. This is one we introduced a little bit yesterday, and we're going to continue on with it next week. S equals d over t. So S is our symbol for speed, d is our symbol for distance, t is our symbol for time. So hopefully, again, this is one you've seen before. I just want to get you comfortable solving this for one of the other variables. Right. What I mean by solving for a variable is that the variable is alone. The variable we're solving for is alone, and it's by itself on the left side. Like our S here, this equation has been solved for S. Okay. Let me change my view here so I get the whole page. It'll be a little bit easier as we go through. So there are 4 rules that I want you to consider when we're doing these kinds of equations, solving these equations. And the first rule is to undo a mathematical operation, you must do the opposite. I mean, hopefully that doesn't sound too strange. And what I mean by the opposite, that if you're multiplying something, then the opposite is division. If you're dividing, the opposite is multiplication. If you add something, the opposite is subtraction. If you subtract something, the opposite is addition. So that's what I mean by opposites. Each one of those operations, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, has an opposite. Okay. Second rule here is you can do anything you want except divide by 0, right? We can't divide by 0 to one side of the equation. So if we divide one side of the equation by x, we have to do the same thing to the other side of the equation. So whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Keep things balanced. Third rule. If there's more than one operation going on, then you must undo them in the opposite order in which you would normally do them. This is, we're going to do things in the opposite order of operations. I'll explain that one more when we get to a little bit more complicated of an equation that we want to rearrange. Today, we're going to do things pretty simply. This one won't particularly come into play. And the fourth one, you can always switch the left and the right sides of the equation. This is useful if, as we're going through our process, going through these rules, we end up with our variable by itself, but it's on the right side. All we need to do is just flip the sides around, and we hit our goal of having the variable alone on the left side. Okay. So let's start applying these rules. And again, what are we trying to do? Here's our equation, S equals d over t, and we want to solve this equation for d. That means we want to have d all by itself, all alone, on the left side of this equation. So first, a couple questions to help us understand our rules and understand what the equation is doing. The first one is d already alone? Well, if we look at our formula here, right, d is not alone. It's not alone. So what is with d in this place? In this equation, what is with d? Well, we see that there's a t over here on this along with our t here, with our d. Okay. Our second question, what mathematical operation connects that d and the t? Right. Here we are, we got d, we've got a division sign here, so we're looking for d is divided by t. So all we're doing right now is just looking at the equation and understanding how it's structured. I know I'm probably getting so basic it might be a little bit confusing, but hopefully it's just like you're looking at me and go, yeah, Dr. Yates, the d is divided by t. Third one, what is the opposite of dividing, right? If we're going to, the opposite of dividing d by t, and remember I talked about every operation has an opposite. What's the opposite of dividing? What is the opposite of dividing? The opposite of dividing is multiplying, right? So if our operation is d divided by t, then our opposite of it would be d multiplied by t. And this gets to our first rule. We need to undo an operation, to undo a mathematical operation, we have to do the opposite operation. Multiplication, division are opposites. Fourth question, what must we do if we multiply the right side by t? Well, this gets to our second rule. If whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So if we're going to multiply the right side by t, we have to multiply the left side by t. All right. And finally, our fifth one here, is there more than one mathematical operation acting on d? Well, in this case, there's only one. We're just doing a division here. We're not adding something, subtracting something, multiplying, or having another factor in here to be divided by. It's just a very simple, there's only one operation happening to our d here, right? This is getting to rule 3. If there's more than one operation, we have to undo them in opposite order. This one's simple. There's only one operation. So we've kind of gone through those questions, just identifying how is our formula here structured and how it might relate to the rules as we apply them. So let's actually go through and do those applications of those rules. So the first one here, our first rule, to undo the mathematical operation, we must do the opposite. So what are we going to do? What's our opposite here? The opposite of dividing, right? We're solving for d, so we want it by itself. What's the operation here? D is being divided by t. So we need to look at rule 2. We need to, whatever we're going to do, in rule 1, we realize we're going to have to do a multiplication by t. So that's what we're going to do here. On rule 2, we're going to do that. We're going to multiply the right side by rt. But if we're going to multiply the right side by t, Rule 2 tells us we have to multiply the left side by t as well. So all we've done is identified what do we need to do the opposite of this division. We need to do multiplication. So we're going to multiply that side by t. If we multiply one side, we got to do the same thing to the other side. Multiply by t. Well, the next thing I want you to see is part of the reason of doing this, right? If we're going to undo the operation, right? If we have a t in the bottom and a t in the top, those guys are going to cancel each other out. Right, they're going to cancel each other out, and that's then going to leave us with just simply d on the right side. Awesome. Now, I'm not sure if your algebra teachers did this with you, but I think it makes it easier. Let's just put our variables in alphabetical order. So on this left side here, we have ts. Let's just modify that so that it's st. All right. All we did was switch the order, and we're allowed to do that. So my last question here, are we done? Are we done? Well, if you remember what was our goal, we wanted d by itself on the left side. Here we have d by itself on the right. So we have one more teeny tiny step. We just have to switch the sides of our equation, switch the left to the right. All right, now we're done. We've got d by itself on the left-hand side. Okay. Hopefully that was a quick review, easy enough review. I'm going to take it and solve the same equation, but we're going to solve it for t. And you'll see that this is going to require one more set of steps. Same process. We're just going to have to do it one more iteration because of the structure. Again, what do we mean? If we're going to solve it for t, here's our equation, s equals d over t. That means we need to rearrange this so we have t by itself on the left side. On the left side. So I'm going to go through some questions. These are the same kinds of questions we had for the last equation, so I don't have these in your notes, but I want you to follow through with me as I'm doing it for this particular equation. So if we look at our equation, is t already alone? No. No, t is not alone. There's a d with it. All right. So we know we've got to do something. The second part is, well, we've identified how that d was related to the t. Now we have to identify, rather, how that d is related to the t. What do we see? D is being divided by t here. Right? D is being divided by t here. So what's the opposite of dividing d by t? Then it would be multiplying d by t. Again, we're applying our rules. We're going to undo that operation of division. We're going to multiply by t to undo that operation. Rule 2 tells us, though, that if we multiply the right side by t, then we better multiply the left side. We got to do the same thing to both sides of our equation. And finally, is there more than one mathematical operation acting on d? Here we go. There's only one, right? There's only one. We just have the d and the t. There's only one. Again, this is looking at rule 3. If there's more than one operation, we got to undo them in the opposite order. We won't get to that until next week. All right. So now let's go and let's apply the rules. We've identified, again, how our equation fits into the 4 rules. Let's actually apply them. So we look at question 1 to undo our rule 1. To undo a mathematical operation, we must do the opposite. So here we've got an operation of d divided by t. We have to do the opposite. It means we're going to multiply by t. We must do the opposite. What does that mean? It means we're going to multiply by the t. Rule 2 tells us, right, whatever we do to the right side, we better do the left side. Whatever we do to the right side, we better do the left side. So we multiplied by t on both sides. Right. Again, what was the idea of doing this? We're trying to undo this division operation over here, and by multiplying by t, we now have a t on top and a t on bottom. The t's will cancel. Right. And then what are we left with? st equals d. Well, the question comes back, are we done? Remember, we're trying to get t by itself. So no, we're not done. We got to do some more. Right, so let's ask the same kind of questions again. Now we've got our equation partway rearranged. Let's again revisit our questions on how we're going to do things. Is our t alone here? Is our t alone here? If not, what is with it? Well, what's with our t? Our s is with our t here. How are s and t connected mathematically? S and t is being multiplied by s. What's the opposite of multiplying t by s? Hopefully it makes sense here. Dividing t by s. That's what we're looking for, dividing t by s. So now we know what our operation is going to be. Now let's apply our rules. We're going to undo our operation. If we want to get t by itself, what do we got to do? We got to divide both sides by s. So let's see. Oh, this shouldn't be here. This shouldn't be here. So let me black this guy out just for a second, because I have a little typo here. That should not be there. All right. Right. To undo that, we have to do the opposite. So here we're multiplying. Our t is multiplied by s. So we know we're going to divide by s. So we have to divide by s. Again, rule 2 tells us that whatever we do to one side, we have to do the other. So we're going to divide the other side by s. Now we can see how the process of dividing, this is undoing our mathematical operation, right? We have an s in the top, an s in the bottom. They cancel each other, and we're simply left with t equals d over s. T equals d over s, right? Now, is our t alone? Yeah, t equals d over s. Yes, our t is alone, and it's on the left-hand side, so we are done. Okay. That's all I want to do with you guys today. This was just simply how do you rearrange a simple equation? S equals d over t is what we started for, so it was already solved for s. I showed you how to rearrange it to solve for d by itself on the left-hand side, and we went over how to solve it for t by itself on the left-hand side. I want you guys to be very comfortable doing this. It should be like riding a bicycle, right? And once it's really not that hard. Just do a couple practices. If it doesn't make enough sense, I want you to get comfortable doing it, because when you do, this will make the rest of the year in physics much, much easier. All right. That's it for today, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye.